Welcome to the 11th Big Sky Virtual Town Hall. I'm EBS Editor-in-Chief Joe O'Connor, and I'm joined today by my colleague, EBS Local Editor Brandon Walker. We've got a great show this evening, and we're excited to bring you guys some really good content today. We want to give first a big thanks to our sponsors for today's town hall, Lone Pine Builders, Shore to Summit Wealth Management, and the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce. Thank you guys very much for what you do. We wouldn't be able to hold these without you. Over the past 4+ months, we've all watched how businesses have reacted to the COVID-19 pandemic. Some flourished, some failed. Many had to get creative and adjust business models. Many received help through federal PPP loans and other grants. But we wondered how 501c3 organizations have been affected by this coronavirus. So we asked 4 local nonprofit leaders to join us on the town hall this evening to share their experiences. Kristen Gardner has led the nonprofit Gallatin River Task Force as executive director for the last 13 years. Full disclosure, my wife Emily works at GRTF too. Kristen has a background in water resource engineering and environmental policy from Tufts University. Kristen Gardner, welcome to the Big Sky Town Hall.
Thank you for having us, Joe.
You're very welcome. So, Kristen, tell me how you and your team, have adjusted during the COVID-19 pandemic. What's changed?
Well, it's been a whirlwind and hard to believe in a sense that it's been 4.5 months. I think right off the bat, we were hosting our annual fly fishing, our F50 fly fishing film tour, and we had to cancel that. And then we just started into planning, and it was the beginning of the resort tax application process and our budgeting process. And so, a lot of time looking at different scenarios and whatnot. We applied for a PPP loan and we were accepted for one. We also gave back money to resort tax actually for the Big Sky Relief Fund. So we ended up canceling some of our programming due to that. And, just constantly looking at what we're working on, what our priorities are, how we can help our community. I mean, it's just been a whirlwind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you just held, you mentioned some programming. You just held Gallatin River Task Force's kids fishing camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did that go?
It was a lot of fun. The kids had a blast. We caught a lot of fish. Thank you, Joe, for volunteering for.
I did volunteer. That was my duty.
And you actually caught the biggest fish, I think, of the whole lot. So kudos to you and your skills. We did run the camp. It was modified. We did abide by the guidelines that a number of nonprofits developed to address COVID, where we're promoting social distancing and wearing masks when we couldn't do that. But overall, I think it went really well, and it was really fun to connect kids to the river and fishing.
Sure. You're talking about, mentioning social distancing, masking up, with rising COVID-19 cases in Montana. Governor Bullock imposed a mask mandate last week. Does GRTF have policies sort of in the office for masks and social distancing, and how does that affect your day-to-day?
Yeah, great question. And that's something that we had to adjust to right off the bat, working in the virtual world. And then once we returned to the office, we were limiting the office to 3 people at a time. And we weren't wearing masks, but just making sure that we were socially distanced and cleaning common areas. Now that there is that mask mandate, we are wearing masks to and from the office, which is on the 2nd floor of the building with Lone Peak Physical Therapy. And then in the office, we haven't been wearing masks unless we're close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of businesses and organizations are changing those policies, but it does seem it's a complicated one. Let me switch gears a little bit. A lawsuit was recently filed against Big Sky Water and Sewer district, claiming elevated, nutrient levels near the plant's wastewater, in the plant's wastewater holding ponds or near them. GRTF studies this data and has a contract with DEQ. What can you share with us about nutrient levels in the watershed?
Yeah, so we've been monitoring the watershed for 20 years now. This is our 20th anniversary. We have a lot of data that we've collected. We have a lot of data from partners like the Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology, Gallatin Local Water Quality District, the Water and Sewer District, and we do have elevated nitrogen levels or nutrients in the West Fork watershed, both in the groundwater and in the streams. And, it's a threat to our watershed in that it can exacerbate algae growth, which affects fish and aquatic insect populations. So it's no surprise that there's elevated nutrients. The cause of those is there's multiple causes. The lawsuit is indicating that the wastewater ponds are leaking, which in fact is likely not the case. So essentially those groundwater storage ponds at the Water and Sewer District, they have a drain system underneath them so that groundwater doesn't pressurize those liners and cause them to rupture. So essentially the groundwater is rerouted under those ponds and comes out on the other end to the surface. And so, that is some of the data that the Cottonwood Law has shown and used in this lawsuit. And so it's groundwater, but we're seeing elevated nutrients in the groundwater up gradient of the ponds as well. And so it just points to other sources as well.
Well, tell me just a little more about, the algae blooms and what causes that, how you guys are working on some things there.
Sure. Well, there's multiple drivers for algae growth. So there's nutrient levels is just a piece of that. And not only the nutrient levels, but the relative ratio of different nutrients, primarily nitrogen and phosphorus. In addition, sunlight, water temperature, water velocity, all of those can impact algae growth. So it's really, it's complex, to say the least. And so we are working on a 3-year study with the DEQ right now, trying to identify those drivers in the Upper Gallatin. This is our 2nd year. Actually, next week we'll be out monitoring algae all week, and we're looking for volunteers. So if anyone is interested in going out on the river to help us, we would love to have you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. No, that'll be good for people to help out with. We've seen how Big Sky's development and traffic, have not slowed, especially over the last month. How is this impacting the watershed?
The biggest threats to our watershed are related to people. The traffic, it does not, I don't think, affects necessarily the watershed, but the people do, and that they create wastewater, they're, fertilizing their lawns or drinking water. So all of those are threats to our watershed and create more work for us in the long run.
Yeah, and thus creates, more projects and more money that you need as a nonprofit. You get a portion of your budget from Big Sky Resort Tax. How was this year different from previous years for GRTF?
We went into resort tax knowing that there was limited funding this year, so we really tightened our belts and went in with significantly less of a request than we had in the years past. And we still got cut significantly from our request. And so we're looking to make up for that in other ways, but it's so hard to know what the environment is going to be for other revenue streams. And we had to postpone our fundraising banquet, which is usually at the end of June, and it'll be virtual on the week of August 7th. And there will be an opportunity for people to bid online and all that information. We'll be doing a huge marketing push for that. But long story short, you know, we did get cut. We're worried about how that's going to affect our organization, how it's going to affect the ongoing threats that are not, that are, you know, are actually growing, I think, it seems like, with the increase of people to our town, and the development has not slowed down. And those are really the biggest threats to our rivers and streams and our drinking water as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking about, you know, revenue sources, has the pandemic or have these times affected the grant writing process, and has that changed at all?
Great question. I don't think it's affected we've been writing a lot more grants to make up for that difference that in our budget. And we've received, you know, some significant ones, which has been great. So far, I haven't noticed a difference, but, you know, it's still too early to tell. But we're really going to be focusing on writing more grants, which takes a lot more time, quite frankly, and a lot more management as well. But, you know, we need to survive, and we definitely want to make sure that the Gallatin is here for our future generations. And so we'll do what we can to make it work.
Sure. Well, you do have your annual fundraising banquet coming up. It's still a go, but it'll have a new look. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so usually our banquet is at the Gallatin River House Grill, and so this year it is virtual. We are extending the time frame, so people will have a whole week to participate in the online auction. We'll start that marketing push. We've already actually started a small chunk out of the Facebook event. We've created our poster. We'll be getting that across town, as well as other of our media outlets. So yeah, it'll be online. It'll be through the same software that we used last year for our banquet. So we're lucky in that it's not going to be the first time that we're using that. But we won't have that interpersonal connection with our donors, which is, you know, it's hard not to have that connection, to be able to tell people the stories. And, you know, I anticipate, and we anticipate, that we will not, you know, we will have less income from our banquet this year, but hoping for enough to get by.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, just another way, you know, you guys are affected. I mean, same with all the other organizations that are doing fundraising efforts. It's a time for being nimble, I guess, is the best way to put it. You know, remind folks when the banquet is and how people can get involved if they'd like to.
So it's the week of August 7th, and we'll be closing the auction on August 14th. So you have a whole week to look at the items and bid. You can set your maximum right off the bat. So that's helpful if you don't want to be checking in on a daily basis. We have a website, hookedonthegallatin.org, that has more information, and you know, look on social media, and around town we'll have posters with more information. But
gotcha. Well, the best of luck to you guys, you know, with that. Just a couple more for you. Your husband Jeremy's a good friend and works at the school. How do you handle that guy?
Great question, Joe. Yeah, you know, people always have asked me why we never had a second child, and I always laugh and say I do have a second child.
That's a pretty good answer.
So it keeps me laughing.
Oh yeah, he's great. Well, we're gonna just end, you know, with you know, final question we'd like to ask each of our panelists tonight. You know, is the growth of Big Sky, you know, is it helpful or is it detrimental to your efforts?
It creates more work for us, that's for sure, but also, I guess, more opportunity for more people to get engaged in our work, because I think, you know, anyone that spends time on the river gets that connection and that love and that passion to make sure that it stays the way it is. So I guess it's challenging, but it's also an opportunity.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us today. Brandon, do we have any questions from the audience?
Thank you, Joe. We do not have any audience questions currently, but Kristen, I'm curious.
Yes.
I'm not sure how much you've been working from home, but I want to know, first off, what is the greatest pro from working remotely and Zoom and all the different platforms that we can utilize, and then also the greatest con?
The greatest pro, I'd say, is that I can have a lot of really focused time without a lot of interruption if I want. That's totally in my control. I feel, or more in my control when I'm at home. The greatest con is just connecting with people in person. It's really difficult, I think, to get your points across. And I miss my team. I have a great team, fairly new, and I really miss interacting with them all in person on a more frequent basis.
Absolutely. Perfect. Well, thank you for that, Kristen. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have the Executive Director of Women in Action, Behr. Jean is currently the only Women in Action employee, as Women in Action counselors typically work on a contractual basis. Women in Action began 15 years ago in Big Sky, and Behr joins us today to help highlight their recent efforts in the community. Jean, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, this has been a challenging time for all businesses, but from a business perspective and as a nonprofit, what has been Women in Action's approach to combating the shifting economic climate over the last 4+ months?
Women in Action is in a fairly strong position. We've always been really lucky to enjoy a lot of community support, but one of the main focuses we've had these last few months is leveraging our existing partnerships with other nonprofits to share resources. So you saw a group of us come together to put together the online community calendar, to do the sidewalk Talk Day of Gratitude, and we just really want to reach out to the community and say, despite these challenging times, we're here to help. We offered 2 months of free counseling through our partners, as well as some of the other events that we had going on. And we have put a lot of our energy into boosting posts on social media so folks are aware of the work that we're doing. And they still feel connected to the resources that are available despite our changing circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned the Sidewalk Chalk event. As an organizer and from being involved with Women in Action, what is it like to see events like that you just kind of come to fruition and see children decorating sidewalks with their parents?
It was amazing. It was the brainchild of some folks at the Big Sky Community Organization, and I immediately jumped in to help with the planning. Folks at Discovery Academy and the school district were instrumental. We tried to make the day as fun and accessible as possible, so we spent the morning putting out chalk stations across town. We did a lot of work on social media to let people know, and we used the hashtag Big Sky Big Thanks because we were so thankful for the folks who were on the front lines, our grocery store employees, our doctors, our nurses, all the folks who had to go to work every day to ensure that we had food on the table, that we had access to healthcare. And we really wanted to bring the community together to show our appreciation. And it was, I actually went around to most of the sites myself and left my notes of thanks. And it was such a highlight in what's been a really challenging time. And so thank you to everyone who got out, and thank you to everyone who helped organize.
Yeah. Well, let's stick with the highlights then. In your opinion, what has been Women in Action's greatest organizational achievement since March?
I think just it's not even a Women in Action highlight. It really is our community partners, because Women in Action has always been an organization that relies on our partnerships with other folks. And so we already had an existing relationship with the school, with Discovery Academy, with Big Sky Community Organization, and others. And so because we had those relationships already built, it was not easy by any means for us to come together, but at least the foundations were there, and the relationships were there, and the partnerships were there. So then we could build on what we've already done in the past and create that virtual platform for folks to still feel connected through social distancing. And so like those weekly meetings that we were having, and everyone bringing together, you know, their chef friend to put on a cooking class, or the yoga instructors who were doing free yoga, you know, the dance party every Friday afternoon, and Wampak putting all their content online. It truly made this time feel productive and valuable for me, because instead of, you know, sitting back and watching everything unfold, it gave me something to do and something to focus on every day to provide this opportunity for the community.
That's awesome. Well, keeping with the theme of connection, you and I have spoken a couple times throughout the pandemic for various articles, and I remember you mentioning that you were the only full-time employee of Women in Action. Can you describe what it's like to have an office space all to yourself, especially given the current, you know, plea for social distancing and all the other health-related concerns?
Yeah, actually, one of the perks that I found about my job, I've been in my position now for just over 2 years, was that I had the ability to work remotely. So I live in Bozeman, commute to Big Sky a couple times a week. And I always loved the fact that I could work from home, work remotely, but now it's been really helpful for me to be able to go to my office knowing that I'm the only one who uses it. There are no, you know, special cleaning protocols that I have, but I still get to like go to my office and have my own space. So I feel like my situation has been a little bit reversed from most people. Like now I look forward to be able to, you know, going to my office rather than enjoying working from home. Because you know, it's a lot easier to get distracted when you're at home. Like you notice that the dishes aren't done and the dog needs to go out. And so it's really nice to me to have that space to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned the free counseling a couple questions back. I'm curious, as we look ahead to the future, how will Women in Action continue to support the Big Sky community?
That's a great question. And so beyond the 2 months of free counseling, what Women in Action does provide is a sliding fee scale for everyone who accesses behavioral health care through our partners, whether it's through the MSU interns. We have 2 of them right now. They have a sliding fee scale from between $5 and $30 per counseling session. And then we have a licensed clinical professional counselor, Casey Anderson, who has a sliding fee scale through WIA, depending on your copay or your cash fee. We slide up to 100% of her fees, depending on your income. And the same with our licensed clinical social worker, Katie Fritz. And so if you meet specific financial requirements, you can still access mental health care at a lower cost, regardless of your insurance status, because we don't believe that it's enough just to offer access to mental health care, but we need to ensure that it's affordable to all.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now kind of switching gears a little bit. In what ways do you monitor and even improve your own mental health?
Well, I would be lying if I said that, you know, these last 4 months have been easy. I think it's really important for everyone who is experiencing challenges with their mental health to know that there are resources out there to, you know, trust that they are confidential, that they're affordable, and that there is no shame in taking care of yourself. Just like, you know, we've all put on a few pounds throughout this time, so it's important that we're getting out there and getting active now that the weather is nice. The same thing goes for your mental health. If you're feeling blue, there are resources out there. And if you don't access, you know, through WIA's resources, there are online platforms that you can use. There are a multitude of ways to take care of your mental health. And so I really encourage everyone to do it. And personally, I, like most people, got a puppy because I have just been home, and we recently lost our dog. So it was something that really helped me through this time. And then just reminding yourself that we live in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And so get out and explore. So go camping for a couple of nights, float the river. This weekend, I think we're gonna do the Beartooth Highway, and just remind yourself that even though maybe plans have changed, you know, weddings have been canceled, vacations have been canceled, this incredible place where we live is the one thing that's not canceled. So get out and enjoy it and take care of yourself. And if you need help, ask for it.
That's great advice. Reflecting on the past 4 months, what is your fondest memory as you've worked from home, or even after you started to reintegrate back into the office?
Oh, my fondest memory. I think it was probably bringing the new puppy to the office for the first time and getting to show her around. So I got to show her off because our offices are right above Grizzly on the River. So I got to show her off to all the guys who work in the shop downstairs. And there's one other office being used upstairs next to me. So I got to introduce her to Marcia, who's the only person I ever see when I'm at work. And she's just been a hit. And so that's been really fun.
That's awesome. All right, the last question that we're posing to everyone tonight: is the growth of Big Sky helpful or detrimental to your efforts?
One of the greatest things about Women in Action is our ability to adapt to the changing needs of our community. There are very few things that were a part of our organization at the very beginning. Not very few things, but I would say that as our community has grown, Women in Action has risen to meet the changing needs. And so we're very nimble. My board is always very responsive to new needs. And so when the COVID-19 crisis hit, you know, they were all 100% on board with like me joining this group to get the virtual programming going. We are looking at the increased numbers of folks who are accessing behavioral healthcare services, and we're planning for the future. And so I think it's important for WIA, as the community grows, that we tap into the new populations, understand their needs and concerns, and reach out to those who are able to support our work. And so I think for us, the growth, besides having the financial resources to support the needs of working families and the folks who are accessing behavioral health care, for us, I just see opportunity to grow and change.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jean. That's all I had, but I want to hand it off to Joe to see if he has any follow-up questions or questions from the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. And thank you, Jean, for joining us tonight. We do have a question from the audience. This one is from Blythe. And it has to do with 211, which is the free suicide, hurt, kind of harm helpline. Have you seen an increase in calls to 211 during the pandemic?
WIA isn't officially aligned with 211, but I can tell you anecdotally from being on calls with Maureen Womack at Bozeman Health, and just getting feedback from the nonprofit community, folks are accessing these resources. And I can tell you, from the numbers that we're seeing from who are accessing care through our partner practitioners, the number is increasing. And so thank you, Blythe, for bringing that up. That's an incredible resource. If you need anything from behavioral health care to housing assistance to food security needs. 211 is your one-stop shop, and they will direct you to the resources that you need.
Got it. No, that's great. I do have one follow-up question for you, Jean, quickly. What do you see as being long-term effects of COVID-19 on mental health?
Well, I am I'm not a licensed therapist. I don't have a mental health background, but from the conversations that I've been having with people, what I have come to understand is that when the initial wave hit, people were looking at their basic necessities. So, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to keep a roof over my head? How am I going to educate my kids? You know, how am I going to feed my family? And so the spike in behavioral health was expected to hit about 6 weeks after the spike that we saw in March. And so that's definitely something that we're noticing. And now as the cases rise again, I think we can expect to see another wave of behavioral health needs. People are under so much strain right now. And I think one thing for folks to consider is that this may be affecting you, and you may not have like the words and tools to address it, because maybe you're someone who has never struggled with anxiety, who has never struggled with depression, and you're not truly understanding what those feelings are that you're having. And so it's really important, if, you know, there have just been a couple of weeks where you are not yourself, recognize that they may be symptoms of you struggling with your mental health. I mean, we all have mental health. Every single person has mental health. We have good days, we have bad days, and it's okay to accept that this stressful environment may be affecting you in a way that you've never experienced before.
Now, that is incredibly helpful. I think, you know, there are obvious immediate and direct effects of the virus, but these are side effects. These are underlying factors and you know, issues that people maybe aren't even aware of. So really appreciate the work you guys are doing. Thanks so much, Jean, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me. This has been wonderful.
You got it. Ciara Wolfe is the Chief Executive Officer for the Big Sky Community Organization. An Oregon native, she holds a master's in nonprofit management from Regis University and a bachelor's in earth science from MSU. And she's been in Montana for about 15 years. Ciara, welcome to the show.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. A lot of things changing right now, a lot of unknowns, ifs and buts. How are you guys holding up at BSCO?
We're digging in and doing as much as we can with the resources that we have on hand.
Mm-hmm. What's new? What's going on in the project world for you guys? Yeah, what do you got going on right now?
Well, we, just like everyone on this call, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we had to respond immediately and make some immediate adjustments. So we did that. We really leaned our machine, made sure and cut any extra expenses to ensure for resilience for the long term, not knowing what the impact was going to be. We also responded by listening to the community, trying to figure out what the greatest needs are, and creating some new programming opportunities, some new recreation opportunities to really respond to those needs. And then we only pursued the projects that were already in motion. So we took a big halt and a big step back. I think a lot of people know BSCO has grown our parks and trails system and our community assets pretty drastically over over the last 5 to 10 years. And every year we've got multiple projects on our books. This year we had several projects on our books as outlined through master planning and a lot of work we've been doing for easements and different things. And we decided to only pursue and move forward with those that were already in motion. And so those projects that we decided to move forward with were finishing up some major improvements to the Ouzel Falls trailhead. If you haven't been up there, it's got an amazing kiosk to educate so many of our visitors about the trail system, really just the ethics and the wildlife and everything. An additional bathroom up there that is around for all winter, which will really help us. Some improvements to the parking area. We also added a trail along Spruce Cone that was already in motion. The Spruce Cone, it's really to replace the sidewalks that can't be found in that South Fork neighborhood. It goes right in front of the Morningstar Learning Center, which so many families walk and bike to, and it connects to our Ouzel Falls Trail. So it was a critical connection there. So we were able to build that out. And then of course we continued with the full construction of Base, the community center that's way. So that project is moving along and on time. And so those are the 3 projects in motion. And we put off several other projects that we were hoping to do this summer for when the time is right for our community.
Gotcha. Yeah, Ouzel Falls is a wonderful resource along with the entire trail system. It just reminds me of the Ouzel bird, which is quite a fascinating animal, isn't it?
It is. That's what it's named after.
Nictitating
You're not the only
membrane.
one that thinks that.
Yeah.
That's a popular trail.
Yeah, they can see underwater. It's cool. Yeah, the Base. I'd just love for you to just tell folks who may not know just a little bit just about the Base project.
Yeah, the Base project is a 25,000 square foot indoor community center that is going to be the home for BSCO, our Arts Council of Big Sky, and also our Big Sky Skating and Hockey Association. The facility is being constructed and will be opening at the end of 2021. In addition to that, we also are redoing the entire park area around it. We actually purchased the 3.2 acres, that entire block that the old Town Center Park sat on. We purchased that to build the facility and also to dedicate it as parkland, because it was not dedicated as parkland. It was actually zoned and set up to be condominiums in the future. So we're making some major improvements to that park, adding a lot of amenities for our community in addition to building that facility. And that's about a $21 million project that's underway. And that the hockey rink and skating rink will be open this winter again. And the park will be open next summer, just in time to be back for Arts Council's Music in the Mountains concerts. And then the facility itself will be open by the end of 2021.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's quite the project. It's very impressive work. Kristen with GRTF mentioned, PPP loans. Were you guys at BSCO able to benefit from the federal PPP loans as well?
We were, yes. We did receive a PPP loan, and then we received one grant from the state when they came out with the social services grant. The interesting thing about our organization is we really, since the pandemic has hit, we've actually been dealing with higher volumes of use and resources than we've ever seen before. And we're doing it on less resources. So that's been it's a different than a lot of situations that people have been in. But you'll see our trail system is seeing anywhere between 25 to 350% increase of users on any given day. Our parks are full to the brim. During the pandemic, we actually extended our grooming season. We partnered with Big Sky Resort and were able to get volunteer groomers, 9 of them, that groomed the 5 additional miles of trails every single night, many of them out there till midnight, grooming those trails so that our community had access to cross-country skiing, no cost cross-country skiing while we were all sheltering in place. We also took on all the volunteer programming coordination for the community. And so we started recruiting a lot of volunteers to help wherever was needed. We matched volunteers with individuals that were at risk, that didn't feel safe going to the post office and some of the other places in the community. So we kind of set up that buddy system, which is actually still in place for individuals that are quarantined so that they have that service. We also helped work with so many of our program partners to develop all the community program, the virtual community programming. Pretty incredible. Jean referenced it, but pretty incredible collaborative effort that the group came together. And it started out, the first initiative was kind of behind behavioral health. And then we realized, hey, everybody's experiencing behavioral health right now. You know, we can't help with the healthcare necessarily at BSCO. We can't provide and treat the sick patients. We can't help with the financial aspect of the people that were losing their jobs. But an even greater population were actually having negative effects every single day due to the anxiety, the quarantine, the isolation, you name it. And so we could help with that. And so we worked with all of our partners. That group, I have the stats in front of me. That group actually provided 19 different organizations came together, provided 3,257 hours of instruction time to our community, which consisted of over 14,000 participants during that time of sheltering in place. And so our organization really was just trying to hold pace with what we normally do and then take on all that extra that we knew our community needed. And so it's been busy. We've dug deep and had to have a lot of moments of pick ourselves up off the ground. We still got this. And now have kind of moved more into a recovery phase of we're not responding anymore. We're just keeping up with everything that's going around us.
Well, those are some impressive numbers, to be sure, you know, and that's something that sticks out to me, in businesses in Big Sky, but also in nonprofits. And, obviously a small town that's unincorporated can have its complications, to be sure. But, the collaborative effort between different organizations is something that we've seen really come through over the past 4 months.
I agree that it's been wonderful to be a part of. I've loved working with all the different partner agencies. And I think our community has done an excellent job at showcasing how these collaboratives can work, like the one I just described to you, and also the relief fund that we put together. I mean, it's really a showcase across the nation as far as how we've been able to respond, leverage resources, and really be flexible to meet what the community's needs are. Always been a big believer in the not-for-profit sector. You listen to your community, you serve your community with what their greatest needs are, and the resources will somehow fall into place. And so that's how I feel we've approached this at BSCO. Even though it's scary and intimidating, and we're going into having to cancel a lot of our summer events that were our major fundraisers and reduced our resort tax ask so significantly as we submitted it. So dealing with less resources, but at the same time handling a lot more of a workload than we've had to in the past.
Sure, it's a lot, and I know a lot of places are doing more with less, these days. So Ciara, you're the CEO at Big Sky Community Organization, and you also sit on the board of Big Sky Resort Area District, and which appropriates money to nonprofits like BSCO. I was curious, how you handle both these roles and, how you square them with each other.
Yeah, it's challenging. I won't say that it's easy, but throughout my career, I've really had to learn how to separate, be very objective about decision making, to be able to make business decisions, to be able to make staff supervision decisions, to be able to make decisions when I'm working with donors on things. And so that skill set, I believe, has really helped me to bring more to the table at Resort Tax as actually one of the applicants and as a nonprofit partner, to be able to share that perspective and kind of that mindset, while at the same time being able to, I guess, just clarify, kind of think about where the best matches are for Resort Tax and do that. But I will say it's really hard. Every single applicant that applies to Resort Tax is an admired. I love every single of those applicants. They're my colleagues. I respect what they do. They all work really hard. They all have really good missions. And so trying to separate that, how you feel about that, with just making the best decisions for our community with public tax dollars is how I've had to approach that. And then I've also recused myself from anything that has to do with the organization that I work with that's an applicant. I just don't even say a word. I am able to do that. It really, nothing anybody says can offend me or make me upset in that way. And that's probably because I've been in the fundraising world for a long time. I've been told no a lot, and it's okay to be able to work through that. So that's kind of how I've handled it.
Yeah, sure. And thanks for, answering that. That was what one of my follow-up questions was going to be, how you treat the conversation of BSCO within BizRad. But, you talked about Big Sky Relief. Tell me, about Big Sky Relief's relationship with BizRad. How does that work?
Yeah, the Big Sky Relief Fund is an initiative, another collaborative that was the resort tax partnering with the 3 local community foundations and also our community members to provide relief funding to different entities and individuals in need. And so we separated it out by which one made most sense. The resort tax really took on funding the local not-for-profits that were providing additional services related to the pandemic. And the 3 community foundations and community members that donated to that fund really worked in an umbrella that was underneath Yellowstone Club Community Foundation. So they really housed the fund, even though all the different entities gave into it. And a committee of board members from all of those entities sat together to help make decisions on that. And that fund has been able to give out over $200,000 to approximately 100 individuals in our community to be able to help support them with any financial economic distress they've had due to loss of work or situations that have occurred due to the pandemic. And so again, just another way to lift up our community, let them know we're here for them, and be able to leverage all the different resources we have here.
Sure. And one benefactor from that has been, has been the Big Sky Medical Center, for supplies and PPE. What kind of equipment was received or requested by BSMC with that funds, those money?
Yeah, they received money from both resort tax and then the relief fund that was set up through the umbrella of YCCF. They received funds to really build out those additional rooms, so they had a larger capacity. They received funds. I know Moonlight and Spanish Peak specifically funded their UV sterilization equipment for those rooms. Also, were able to order the additional ventilators, even though they haven't arrived yet, and a higher capacity testing machine for the Big Sky community. So that they've been able to do that, some additional PPP stuff for the workers or PPE stuff for the workers. So a variety of needs that the medical center needed immediately to be able to be prepared and respond to whatever spike of the pandemic that we would see or we will still see.
Sure. We reported a story online yesterday in the EBS newspaper about, how 700 COVID-19 tests were conducted in Big Sky, and the tests, many of them have not yet been received. I should note that this was paid for through the Federal CARES Act, not through Big Sky Relief or Big Sky Resort Area District. But you mentioned ventilators have not yet been received, and Big Sky Medical Center has an analyzer, but they haven't been able to use it. Why is it so hard to get supplies such as test kits for the analyzer?
Well, I'll say it has nothing to do with our local hospital system or our Gallatin County Health Department. They've been nothing but helpful and supportive in this process. So I want to make sure that that's clear to our community. It's been very challenging at the state and federal level. And so actually a bunch of local leaders through the resort tax really did the work along with the Chamber of Commerce here in Big Sky, signed off and sent letters to our senators, to our representatives saying, we need some attention here in Gallatin County. We need some attention here in Big Sky, Montana. We recognize that our numbers in comparison to other hotspots in this country aren't even close to what those hotspots are seeing. We are not dealing with the same issues of the hospitals being overcrowded, of there not being enough services. But at the same time, we do have a large amount of tourists and transient population coming through here. I think everyone can tell that by walking around Big Sky these days. And we need to keep our people safe. And in order to do that, we have to have the testing and the safety equipment and the hospital equipment to do that. And so really it comes down to more of a federal and state level than it is local. And unfortunately, because of our low numbers, even though they feel high to us or higher than what they have been. Right now, they're still so low compared to many, many other parts of the country. And so we're just not there in the priority. But we're continuing to work. We won't stop pushing till we get it. And let's hope that it's just insurance, that we're not going to need some of that stuff up here at Big Sky, but we're still going to get, at least right now. But we'll keep pushing, and our hospital system's doing a great job at that, along with Gallatin County Health.
Yeah, I think we've discovered similar results based on our reporting. You know, of course, the numbers are relative, but you know, it doesn't take a lot to overwhelm a small hospital system. But I do, you know, there has been some great collaboration and good work on the local and state level as well. Let me shift gears real quickly. I'd love to ask you just about your upcoming Parks and Trails event.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. We, in the past at BSCO, we've always hosted a fundraising event in the summer, which has been a major fundraiser for us. It raises over $200,000, which goes straight to supporting our community programs, our summer camp program, our softball program, our additional acquisition of easements for trails, the planning that we do for our parks, the support of that base project to get up and off the ground. All the money that we raise for that capital campaign, not one dime of it is going to the organization that's actually making it all happen. So our annual funds that we raise to make that stuff happen, a big chunk of it's come from our event. And we unfortunately can't hold that event. And we couldn't hold our 4th of July running a race event either. And we don't know what else is going to be canceled in the future. So we've shifted just like everyone else, but we're doing a whole week of celebrating our parks, trails, and recreation. Because I don't know about you guys, but they are my savior right now. Biking, running, hiking outside is the one safe thing that we can do. And so we want to celebrate that. That's our culture, and our community values that. And so starting this Saturday, all the way through the 31st, we have a variety of events and ways that we're raising money to support our work. We have free guided hikes almost every day of the week. You can find the schedule on our website, bscomt.org. We also have volunteers at all the trailheads talking to people. We are selling raffle tickets right now. We have been through the summer, and we're going to continue to do it at the farmers market tomorrow night and next Wednesday. And you can come by our office to win a e-bike that was donated to us. And then we, as the other organizations, we are doing an online auction that's opening up this Saturday and ending next Friday, July 31st, has to raise money for our mission. And in addition to that, we have several hosts that are actually hosting a small house party at their house of their friends to the night of Friday, July 31st. Instead of all coming together, 250 people under a tent, we can't do that. They're doing small ones all over the community where they're hosting an event at their house to really support us and encouraging their friends to support us through that online auction that night, which will end at midnight. So it's a culmination of a variety of things, a way to celebrate, and also a way to raise the necessary funds to continue the work that we do.
Okay, nice. Yeah, and learning more, bscomt.org. Last question that I have for you, Ciara. Again, you know, we're asking each of our panelists this tonight. Is the growth of Big Sky, in your eyes and in BSCO's eyes, helpful or detrimental to the organization's efforts?
Well, I've been in Big Sky for 5 years. So my perspective is that range. I will say that I'm a Bobcat alumni. So I was around Big Sky years and years ago, even though I didn't live here. And I never would have imagined in a million years graduating that my husband and I would pick this as the place to raise our children. But because of the growth, the school system, the job opportunities, the neighborhoods, the community, we feel like the luckiest people in the world to get to live here. So on a personal note, I'd say it has been nothing but amazing for us. On a professional note, I would also say for BSCO, it's provided a lot of opportunity. It provides a lot more work as far as taking care of everything. They get hammered more. We have a lot more damage done to our systems and our parks, a lot more maintenance and cleaning that needs to happen. But most of that we can manage. We can continue. We just have to put more time and energy and resources into it. But the opportunities have come with more trail mileage, more parkland. This community center project wouldn't have happened without the growth of this community to be able to support it and everyone to step up and help donate to it. So there's a lot of opportunities we're getting. We're also seeing switchovers and landowners. So to where all of a sudden a connection on a trail we never thought we were going to get, when that property switches to a different landowner, they are more willing to work with us, and we're seeing and being able to link up potential long-term dreams for this community. So there's some interesting opportunities for us that we've been able to take advantage of, but again, you have to balance that with the damage that is done to the system and ensure you keep your resources up. And that's another reason why that base project, we were so driven to build it as environmentally efficient with the lowest carbon footprint we possibly could as a role model building for this community. We're still on track for that, to be a LEED platinum commercial building, one of the first one in this entire area, because that's our values and that's what Big Sky believes in. And so we're trying to balance our growth with also the maintenance, the care, the stewardship, and the values that have brought us here.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for that, Ciara. And thanks, for joining us again. It's been great talking to everybody so far, and we're looking forward to our next panelist. But before we bring her on, Brandon, any audience questions, any follow-ups from you?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And thank you, Ciara, for joining us. I have an audience question, and then I have a follow-up question myself. First, I'll do the audience question. This one's from Bella. Had all of the funding for base been secured before the pandemic?
Well, it depends on what you call secured. We had raised about $20.5 million before the pandemic. However, several of those were pledges and commitments made over multi-years out in the future. So there was a lot of hesitation that are people still going to be able to make those philanthropic commitments with some of the negative economic impact and what was happening in our economy. So as of right now, our donors have continued to be good to us and kept their pledges, but there's still time to tell. And so we're just navigating that as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you discussed events and BSCO's involvement in the community. Joe and I are both participants in the Big Sky Co-ed Softball League. I'm curious, what feedback have you received from participants and community members that you were able to, put that on and still make it happen in a safe fashion?
Everyone's so happy. Ton of work. I can't say enough how much my staff team is like such rock stars. It's not just like the extra people, it's everything you're doing. You have to have all new HR policies. And this is every business. This just isn't us. All new HR policies, so much extra work, all this screening, all this. And we have volunteers. Jody and Whitney, who chair that softball league, have been amazing. Our staff team have really dove in and tried to set it up safe. Same thing with our summer camp. All of our families and parents that are working are so happy, and the kids are happy, but a lot of extra work. Our camp manager, Richard, has just been so flexible and so driven to try to keep everyone safe. And so so far we've only heard positives, but it's been very challenging to navigate, especially as you start to see positive tests come up and how things happen. But so far we've been able to keep the folks safe in our environment. It's all outdoor. That helps. We're unique in that way. And we hope we can continue.
Well, thank you, Ciara. I appreciate it. And I applaud all of your team's efforts.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, our final guest this evening is a more than 6-year veteran with the Big Sky Community Food Bank. She was the only paid employee, part-time at that, for the food bank when the pandemic began to spread throughout the United States. Operations Manager and Services Navigator Sarah Gaither Bivins joins us to elaborate on the efforts of the food bank over the past 4+ months. Thanks for joining us tonight, Sarah.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, first off, can you explain how the Big Sky Community Food Bank is funded?
Sure. We are very fortunate to have a pretty diverse kind of funding sources. We get approximately 1/3 of our funding from the resort tax, about 1/3 of our funding from philanthropic organizations and community foundations, and also grants, other grants. And then about a third of our funding from individual donors. Those donors are usually giving during the holiday season. So we, are always looking forward to hearing from that donor base. Like everyone else on this call, our fundraising strategies have had to change. We can't do any of the in-person events this year. So we have started to try and shift things to online. We've started a sponsorship program. So people who are interested in helping out the food bank can sponsor a family, or you can pick like a commodity of, you can sponsor eggs for the month, or you can sponsor meats for the month. So those are just some ways that we're trying to kind of shake it up and move things online to help everybody remain involved in what's going on here.
Yeah, well, those are really great, adaptive ideas and continuing to help fuel your efforts going forward. You mentioned individual donors. How can community members make monetary donations to the food bank?
Sure. Like I said, you can choose to be a sponsor, a monthly sponsor. You can go to our website, bigskyfoodbank.org, and donate online. You can do a recurring donation if you want to be a sponsor. Also, you could just stop by the food bank. If you haven't been here, stop by and see us. Wear your mask, please. And we'd love to give you a tour and tell you how else you can be involved.
Yeah. So you've been an employee at the food bank for more than 6 years, assisting families with food needs. In your experience, has there ever been a greater time of need in this community?
So over the last 6 years, each year we see dips and rises in service needs. So every fall, when people have moved to Big Sky for their winter jobs, but aren't quite getting their full hours yet, or maybe even they haven't started their jobs yet, our services will rise about 3 times what they are during the middle of the summer. So we're very used to being really super busy in the fall, a little bit slower during the winter, have another spike in the spring, and then pretty quiet during the summer. This spring, during COVID, we jumped to more than 3 times what our normal spring would be, even surpassing our fall services this year. So while it was shocking to happen in the spring, it wasn't necessarily something that we're unused to. We're kind of used to that cycle. As far as how people have responded to it, this is definitely the most afraid our customers have been. The insecurity of people's housing, everybody kind of getting laid off all at once, people getting mixed messages about whether should we stay in town, will we have a job coming back, should we leave town, will the medical system support us if we all get sick. This has definitely been the most scared and uncertain our customers have been. However, by the numbers, this hasn't been kind of the worst year. By the numbers, our biggest year was 2017. And I think that year was so big for us for different reasons. That was before the minimum wage had been increased. So people were employed here in Big Sky, even getting minimum wage, which is $8.30 an hour. That's really hard to live on in a town like Big Sky, as everyone knows. 2018, 2019, I think employers started paying a little bit more. And so our numbers have actually decreased since 2017. So yeah, that's kind of my answer. By the numbers, it's 2017 has been the worst year for people. This spring has been the scariest for people.
It's great information. And I'm hoping we can dive into the numbers a little more deeply right now. We spoke for an article in early April, and you told me at the time that the food bank had supplied families with 177 food boxes in roughly a 3-week span. And in comparison, you said in a typical off season, I mean, given this was the spring, but typical off season would be 40 boxes. To date, do you know how many food boxes the community food bank has supplied to families throughout the pandemic?
Yeah, we have, well, throughout the pandemic, we did 185 in March, 209 in April, and 119 in May. As for the fiscal year, which starts April 1st, we have done 1,420 food boxes.
Wow, that's outstanding effort on your part. What food items is the food bank typically in need of?
Sure. A lot of my customers, if they live in company housing, they obviously don't have a full kitchen. So things that are easily cooked in a microwave are always really, we need those kind of things. Things that can be cooked in a crock pot are also really good. I'm always looking for soup. I'm always looking for pasta sauce, and I'm always looking for proteins. So whether that be canned protein or frozen protein, I will take your last year's game if you have extra game that's been processed in a facility. So yeah, proteins, soups, things that can be frozen and things that can be microwaved.
Yeah. Well, with those outstanding numbers that you just referred to, prior to the pandemic, you were the only paid employee of the Big Sky Community Food Bank. As businesses shuttered their doors, your staff actually grew. Can you introduce your new staff members and their roles?
Sure. Yeah, it's been lovely to be able to bring on 2 new staff people, Lane Hegnes and Candace Brown Miller. They're both on contract until September, and they're totaling about 15 hours a week. Candace has been in the community for about 15 years, I believe. She and her son Harbor would volunteer here years ago, and she was also on my advisory council for a period of time before leaving to travel a little bit. Lane has been on my advisory council for 4 years now, and so I'm very happy that they had time in their schedules to offer here for our operations. Lane is kind of like my customer care guru. She's so wonderful with our customers and is always thinking about people's feelings, how to make them feel welcome, how to make them feel supported, offering different resources to them. Candace is kind of my food service professional. She also works at the Hungry Moose. And so she has the line on nutritious food, interesting ideas to do for menu items to do with our food. She has kind of taken on the role of helping to order things through the Hungry Moose. So all 3 of the grocery stores have done a wonderful job of supporting the food bank, and that's another way that people can get involved. The Hungry Moose has offered to take donations into a fund for us to do some ordering, and Candace has kind of helped spearhead that option. So yeah, I'm so glad to have both of these ladies here so that I can take a day off every now and then.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it sounds like you mentioned that you each have your own strong suits. So I'm curious, how would you say the chemistry of your staff has evolved throughout the past 4 months?
Oh gosh, it's like so easy to get along with both of these girls. We rely on each other, we communicate well, we leave each other notes and like words of encouragement. It's been really lovely. The chemistry is great.
Yeah, and as you reflect on the past 4 months, what has been your fondest memory?
I mean, it always feels good to be able to meet the needs of a household in need, especially when they come So unsure, so scared, really. We've been able to provide so many things that are kind of outside food boxes. So we've been able to help people with housing. We've been able to help people partake in the Big Sky Relief Funds. We've been able to help people apply for different jobs. Tomorrow, I'm going to be taking gas cards to a client who lives in Gateway, but works up here in Big Sky. So I think all of those times that we're able to, even in the smallest way, meet somebody's need, that's always the best feeling.
Yeah, that's incredible. Commend you for that, and the Big Sky Community Food Bank as a whole. All right, the last question I have is the one we've been asking everybody tonight. Is the growth of Big Sky helpful or detrimental to your efforts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all want to live in a world where food banks don't have to exist, right? We all want to live in a community where people are stably housed and families get paid enough to feed their families, to feed their children. And, you know, until that day, we will be here to meet people's needs. The growth of Big Sky has come twofold. The more employees that are able to get jobs here, the more employees that need to find housing, the more employees that need a living wage. But also, with the growth come all of these lovely resources. The grocery stores supporting us, the restaurants supporting us. So when COVID hit on March 13th, all of the restaurants shutting down, many of them reached out to us to give us the leftover of their inventory. So many restaurants got together, put their produce together and made us soups to freeze. So like that resource would have never have happened without the growth of Big Sky. So yeah, with the growth also come all of these amazing resources, kind of echoing everybody else's answer. Comes both challenges and resources, so.
Yeah, that was a really great story. Thank you for sharing that, Ciara, and thank you for all of your efforts. That's all I had for questions tonight, but I would like to pass it off to Joe to see if he has any follow-ups or questions from the audience.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brandon. And thank you so much, Ciara. We really appreciate yours and all the other panelists' comments tonight. I have a follow-up question, you know, so people don't typically think of Big Sky as a community with folks having needs, such as the ones the Community Food Bank provides. You know, what would you say to the people who hold these beliefs?
Well, you know, it's the workforce of Big Sky that that needs some extra help. Most of our clients come here just once a year or maybe twice a year during an emergency. And I think everybody can relate to the fact that sometimes you break down or sometimes you tear your ACL. And these emergencies are things that happen to every household. The difference being that when you're getting paid less than a minimum wage, you don't have the savings to deal with those emergencies, and therefore, you know, you might need a little extra help. So I think, yeah, the message is that there is a workforce in Big Sky. There are people who are bumping your chairs. There are people who are cleaning the rooms. There are people who are serving your drinks, and many of them don't have the safety net to deal with emergencies that happen. So that's, yeah, that's the reality for people.
Yeah, no, that's That's a really great answer. And if there was ever a time for kindness and compassion, I think we're there. Ciara, thank you so much for your time. And the rest of our panelists, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to send it back to Brandon to sign us off.
Thank you, Joe. Well, once again, I would like to thank our sponsors for today's town hall, Lone Pine Builders, Shore to Summit Wealth Management, and the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce, as well as all of our panelists this evening for their time and participation in the town hall. As we continue to navigate murky waters with a multitude of headlines circulating, I feel it's important that we remember to support one another. There's no telling when exactly we'll emerge on the other side of the COVID-19 pandemic or other national movements. But if we all do our part and support each other, the new normal may begin to feel not so different after all. For my colleague Joe O'Connor and all of us at Outlaw Partners, have a great evening.